The Isle of Wight Festival in 1970 was one of the largest and most iconic music events in history. Held from the 26th of August to the 31st, it attracted an estimated 700,000 people, surpassing even Woodstock in scale. Taking place on the tranquil, unassuming Isle of Wight off the southern coast of England, it was headlined by some of the biggest names in rock and folk music at the time. Though in part marred by significant logistical challenges, including overcrowding, protests over high ticket prices, and persistent sound issues, the festival is remembered as a defining moment in music history and a symbolic event of the counterculture movement. In this video, we will look at the top 5 performances of the 1970 Isle of Wight Festival. The Moody Blues. Following a string of successful album releases, including On the Threshold of a Dream, the band's first album to hit #1 on the charts, and singles such as Nights in White Satin and Tuesday Afternoon, the band had established themselves as a premier act in British music. Though they missed Woodstock the year before due to booking clashes, the band were out in full force at the Isle of Wight Festival. Playing on the Sunday, the Moody Blues provided the crowd with an ethereal, psychedelic performance that was simultaneously high energy and brooding, driving and transcendent. With Legend of a Mind, an ode to American psychologist and drug advocate Timothy Leary, encapsulating the band's triumphal performance, with its hypnotic flute solo and epic outro better than any other on their set. Though the set began in the early summer evening, by Legend of a Mind, nightfall had descended upon the festival, serving as a perfect, dare I say moody, backdrop for one of the band's best works. Bassist John Lodge later recalled when discussing the Isle of Wight Festival, "It was just an amazing experience. The period of time was just an amazing experience, because it was the first time for young people from all over the world getting together, all united for one thing, music." Miles Davis. For a music festival more closely associated with rock and folk music, it may seem out of place that a jazz musician should have a slot on the bill. Miles Davis, of course, was no usual jazz musician though. Now in his mid-40s by 1970, and aware of the changing musical landscape, Davis had evolved his sound to blend free-form sophisticated jazz with supersonic funk, and by listening to his Isle of Wight performance, he did this with great success. His set was seductive, intoxicating and expansive, and capturing a vital element of the time, it was experimental. One of the great triumphs of the counterculture era was that it charted new musical territories, and Miles Davis undoubtedly did that at the Isle of Wight Festival. He took an old musical genre jazz, brought it to the table for a modern audience, and showed he was still a musical force to be reckoned with. A highlight of his set was a then unnamed piece, to which when asked what it was called, Davis coolly replied, "Call it anything." Going on for over 30 minutes, Davis and his band took the audience on a funky, jazzy, and even psychedelic musical journey. This was the biggest performance in Miles' career, and he rose to the occasion. And given the size of the crowd, the biggest for any jazz musician then and since. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix's performance at the Isle of Wight Festival served as somewhat of an untimely swan song for the guitar master. Taking place just 3 weeks before his tragic death, it marked his last major live performance. Though still in his 20s, Hendrix was already a global sensation, a revolutionary, and a legend, adored by both his fans and musical peers. Despite being one of the most anticipated acts, however, his Isle of Wight performance was met with a mix of emotions. Following on from his now acclaimed performance in Maui, Hawaii, filmed for the movie The Rainbow Bridge in late July, Jimi returned to the stage, for the first time in England since the Royal Albert Hall, in February 1969. Despite Pink Floyd's David Gilmour helping with the sound mixing, technical issues, sound problems, and Jimi Hendrix's own exhaustion, after years of near-incessant touring were evident during his Isle of Wight set. Nevertheless, his raw talent still shone through. Highlights of the set included renditions of Foxy Lady, All Along the Watchtower, Hey Joe, The Machine, and a cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, showing once again that he could take someone else's song and make it sound as though it was his own. The Isle of Wight show, while not considered his best due to these challenges, is remembered for its historical significance. Hendrix's presence and mastery, even under less than ideal conditions, reaffirmed his status as one of the greatest guitarists in the world, and showed that even on a bad day, he was on the pantheon of live music, making it a poignant and powerful farewell to his fans and music in general. The Doors. The Doors' performance at the Isle of Wight Festival remains memorable. Though subdued compared to their earlier, more energetic shows, it marked one of the band's last major performances before Jim Morrison's death in 1971. Morrison, already introspective at this point, requested that the spotlights be turned off during their set, preferring the band to remain in near darkness. "Our set was subdued but very intense," recalled organist Ray Manzarek. "We played with a controlled fury, and Jim was in fine vocal form. He sang for all he was worth, but moved nary a muscle. Dionysus had been shackled." This choice added a shadowy, almost haunting atmosphere to the performance, aligning with Morrison's increasingly brooding stage presence. He stood relatively still throughout the show, delivering songs with a low, hypnotic intensity, rather than the wild energy of previous years. The set list included hits like Break On Through, Light My Fire, When the Music's Over, and their enigmatic psychedelic masterpiece, The End. Despite Morrison's restrained demeanour, the Doors' musicianship was impeccable. Robbie Krieger's guitar, Ray Manzarek's keyboards, and John Densmore's drumming blended to create their signature psychedelic rock sound, resonating deeply with the crowd. The performance was a unique glimpse into the band's final era, which focused on mood and atmosphere over showmanship. The Who. The Who's performance at the Isle of Wight is widely regarded as one of their most electrifying live shows, and is our choice as top performance at the festival. Taking the stage in the early hours of Sunday, the band delivered a high-energy set that showcased their musical prowess, having been well rehearsed and in perfect sync after nearly 2 years of intensive touring behind their rock opera Tommy. Tommy, released in 1969, tells the story of a deaf, dumb and blind boy who becomes a pinball champion and spiritual leader, marking a pivotal moment in the band's career. Their set list featured hits like My Generation and I Can't Explain, alongside an extended performance of Tommy. The near-constant touring had sharpened the band's dynamics, with Roger Daltrey's powerful vocals, Pete Townshend's windmill guitar moves, John Entwistle's steady bass lines, and Keith Moon's chaotic yet precise drumming working together seamlessly. Their tight performance demonstrated how in tune they had become as musicians, each member contributing to the explosive energy that filled the stage. The performance remains one of the band's most iconic, showcasing both their technical skill and their synergy after years of refining their sound on the road. So there you have our video on the top 5 performances at the 1970 Isle of Wight Festival. Though debates will rage on over the highs and lows of the festival, what is certain is that it was an incredible moment for music, which continued the spirit of the 1960s, with festivals like Monterey and Woodstock into the new decade. Thank you for watching. If you would like to see more on a wide variety of interesting topics, then like, comment and subscribe.